beats, baby.
Welcome to Universal Theory, where the goal is to find a common language between the abstract and concrete. We are the unorthodox representation of physics and metaphysics. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Trent.
And together, we are Universal Theory.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Universal Theory. I'm your co-host, Trent. Joined as always, Jordan. How you doing today, man? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. We're doing today. Got the merch on, flexing it. You can see in the room, it's a vibe now. We done upgraded the production because of y'all. We appreciate the feedback. You know, we're trying to make it as comfortable for everybody as possible. It feels good in here now. Mm-hmm. We got the window crack behind me, so I'm not burning up to death.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks since we've been here. Mm-hmm. Jordan took a little break, but hey, we were caught up. We were ahead of schedule. We got all the content to y'all. Hopefully you enjoyed Rhythm and then the background Q&A episode that we dropped. And now we're on to Cause and Effect. Mm-hmm. Man, 7 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Came quick.
Came super quick. Shout out to Ashley. Was the first person to buy merch, the Initiate Edition. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. And then we also got a purchase from Caffeine. Caffeine bought our merch as well today. So we appreciate all your support. Right? The merch is literally for you. It's for the brand. It's for awareness. Yeah, and if you go to our link tree, click on the Universal Threads button. That's the name of our store. And here are some of the items. And as you can see, this is the Initiate Edition. We're passing all the savings on to you. It's a great deal for the value. And it's only going to be for the first 50 pieces. After that, we'll go back to just standard apparel. We will do promotions in the future, but for now, Initiate Edition, 50 pieces. Also, shout out to Jerome Duffy and Vitali for being in the comments. We appreciate that, for being soldiers down there, for asking questions, for communicating, for all that you do. We appreciate you being a part of the community. So we want to give you a shout out and give you your proper dues for helping us out. Mm-hmm. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That's more important than the merchandise. Commenting, it's probably about the same, right? Being interactive, like, sharing, and subscribing is all the most important things we can do. We've got our Patreon up as well, Jordan's got some great content that's about to go up into that. I've got some content I'm about to record to go up into that. And we're going to try to make that the place where we aren't just talking about data. We're talking about experiences as well. So if you want to be a part of our Patreon and you've had some experiences, our minimal tier is a couple bucks a month, and you can get in on some extra great content and, you know, help build the community from that side as well. So yeah, we're building out the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. It's coming together. It's a lot of work, but we love it. We love what we do.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So yeah, Cause and Effect. It's in effect, baby. Cause is in effect, baby. Yeah, you see we got our new logo back here too. All right, well, it's not really a new logo, but that's our new splash screen for our podcast. Shout out to Wifey for making that. Mm-hmm. Thank you. So yeah, we're trying to bring some pleasing aesthetics to the conversation as well. And actually, man, my heart was so warm when I got a message from Yogi. Western Yogi hit me up and he was like, y'all, the science guy and I were trying to heal. I'm letting him come to my mansion out, and I guess he's got a mansion out in Breck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he said, hey, I'm letting him come out to my mansion out in Breck, and he actually started recording some videos for us. So we're going to share those with you right now.
Yeah, man, Western Yogi, I'm out here lounging, like
politicking with my astro and etherical self, in the metaphysical plane. I vibrate the particles and let you see me sometimes. But yeah, I'm just politicking.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, where you at right now?
I'm in my mansion, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, for real? I thought this was a hotel.
Nah, I own the hotel. And the mountain is on, you know what I'm saying?
I try to, get a nice hotel through Priceline, and I'm trying to enjoy this nice cocktail. And look who shows up.
Yeah, I paid for it. I even booked his hotel. He lucky I gave him 2 pillows with his punk ass.
We know that's not true.
Yeah.
We know that the Western Yogi is out here living off dreams and hopes of the children. Gotta get these steps in. Yo, count my calories and just doing the workout here. Oh, hey, Western Yogi, are you over there recording me? This is not funny. This is serious academic stuff here.
Well, yeah, this what called the butterfly effect, right?
Yeah. Oh, that good workout. Oh, feel the burn. Feel the rhythm. Feel the ride.
Westside Yogi. Western Yogi. Western Yogi. Western Yogi. Yeah. Shaolin, that's what they taught me. Taught me the West Side Mudra push-up. You ain't ready for that, boy. That ain't even all the fingers, cause you're crisscrossing them.
Mr. Lonely, I am so lonely. I have nobody. I'm my own. I am so lonely. Where's Western Yogi? Oh, I'm talking about. Oh, so relaxing in the hot tub. Now I get why people do these kind of things. Oh, this is so relaxing on my body. Well, time to go save the world.
He gonna go save the world or whatever. He gonna take these jewels I gave him. Western Yogi.
Oh, he wishes.
Yeah.
You just wish you said anything important for once in your life.
Yeah, he been taking my classes on the low key, you know what I'm saying?
No.
Yeah.
I've broken my phone, my tablet, my pillow. He's ruined relationships. I can't with this guy anymore. I can't.
Yeah, I actually helped him with the West Side Mudra technique. He really venting right now, like them jacuzzi pools.
Yes, I am as hot as those jacuzzi pools right now. Weston, would you please stop vlogging? We're supposed to be just healing right now and getting over this stuff.
Yeah, look. Does he look like he's healing anything? Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't seem like the science guy was having nearly as much fun as the Western Yogi was having.
Yeah, he did.
But I am glad that y'all are healing. We want to see y'all do some more collabs in the future. So Western Yogi, keep that camera out and keep recording that stuff because that's gold. Mm-hmm. That is gold. But yeah, so onto the podcast, cause and effect. This is one of the ones that, hey, in my head, it should be one of the first principles that we do. It should be one of the first principles in the book because it's one that a lot of the other principles, it's easier to see the other principles in cause and effect, right? Or, sorry, if you're looking at rhythm, right? The measure of the swing to the left is a measure of the swing to the right. Well, that's cause and effect. Right? We see that thing happening. We can see in the splash screen in the background, we've got dominoes, cause and effect. And I think that's a very common way to look at cause and effect. If you're going to visualize it, dominoes falling over, you're never going to have the fifth domino fall before the first, the second, the third, the fourth domino fall. So things happen in a particular order. The amazing thing about cause and effect is, and we're going to get into this, is there is no first cause. And that's kind of something that might take you a little bit to get used to the fact that there is no first cause. Just start to throw out these ideas and these things that you've been taught about the first, and that science. Big Bang is a good example. And people, scientists need one miracle. Scientists are like, give me one miracle and I'll explain the world. But I need that one. Mm-hmm. And the one miracle that I'm referring to is the Big Bang. That's what they need. They need energy to come from essentially nowhere. Mm. And once you give them this energy from the Big Bang, then they can do things like create phones and create Wi-Fi and all this amazing stuff. But they need that miracle. So if you talk to a scientist, I feel like in general, they're going to say, hey, it doesn't matter if there was something before the Big Bang. That was so long ago. What we calculate from that is correct. Why does it matter if there was anything before the Big Bang? And it's like, okay. And then other scientists will probably say, no, that is the first. That is the first thing that happened. That's what we've been taught, right? So that's going to be your rigid teacher. And then you have people like Sean Carroll and these people that study general relativity, that believe in the multiverse, that are going to be like, yeah, Big Bangs happen all the time. Mm-hmm. And to think about that is pretty mind-opening that, hey, our Big Bang isn't the only Big Bang in the idea of a multiverse. You have Big Bangs happening all the times with new universes coming in and out of existence. As long as the energy within the multiverse is contained, then it doesn't matter which universe it's spread to.
Yes.
So, and that's kind of the ideas that I think Jordan and I fall in line with a lot more. It just makes more sense. There is no beginning, so we're following the principle. If you think of a multiverse just constantly, it's just always been Big Bang, heat death, or whatever the end would be, Big Bang, heat death, in these different universes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And in metaphysics, you have the same concept where you have people subscribing to everything coming from nothing.
Right.
Now, that was a big debate, and it still is in philosophy. Can something actually come from nothing? And especially if that something is causal.
Right.
So it's like it can't come from nothing because it would have to have a preceding cause. Mm-hmm. And then that cause couldn't have an origin point because when it initiates, you're going to have the beginning of something. And it's like, well, can it have a beginning?
Right. Yeah.
Is that thing that not preceded it, whether it was like a clock, let's say it was an internal clock that just said now, boom, now you go off. That's still a preceding causal agent.
Yeah.
And then something would have made the clock the way that it was. So you're going to get to an infinite string of pre-causes, and you could never find the end of it because technically there shouldn't be for the principle to exist.
Yeah, we had some great conversations about that and about randomness and about cause and effect and about how can you have, once you have a cause, now it's stuck. You can't get out of that cause and effect. And it's a similar thing, right? Trying to come from randomness to cause and effect is kind of as coming from nothing to cause and effect, right?
Yes.
It's a similar idea. And once I kind of latched on to that, oh yeah, how do you can't escape it. Mm-hmm. Then it was much easier for me to start to agree with it, to start to internalize it and say, yep, that's got to be true. So yeah, I mean, metaphysics does have that same problem. Math has that same problem. We kind of see it as an issue everywhere, and it's just, is it a problem with the math itself? No, because we still get the right answers, but it's the person doing it that needs to understand the formal process and the logic behind cause and effect.
Yes. And I think that saying it in that way, saying that it is logical, it's a logical progression, and it's accompanied by conservation. Conservation, if we have conservation in the universe, we can't go from no energy and no conservation to energy and conservation.
Right.
That's not how cause and effect works.
Right.
Now, if we throw cause and effect out the window, then hey, here we could do whatever we want, baby. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, that's a scary world. And people would be like, yeah, I would love that. Let me be that agent. I used to think that. Let me be that agent that can jump from cause and effect to randomness and back. But we've had conversations, that's how do you get back? Once you lose cause and effect, how do you get back to it? Let's say you for somehow can escape the matrix and now you're in randomness. Good luck getting back unless you get back through randomness. And if you get back through randomness, would you even know where you were? And then could you stay there? So as much as we like to think, fantastically that being outside of these principles means you're like Neo, I would think, don't think like that. To me, that's the wrong mindset to have. Neo is the one who moves within the principles, who understands the principles, and then can manipulate the principles like we talked about, bending with polarity and jumping from one pole to another pole and letting that affect your karma. So that is more of, I think, Neo than somebody who's like, cause and effect to randomness, and then...
Well, it's an impossibility.
Right.
So it's like, once you're in a cause and effect system, a cause and effect based system, you're trapped in it. And technically, as soon as you're there, you've always been there.
Right.
You've always been trapped in it. You were never anywhere else. And if you were, then it would have to interact with that system on a causal level.
Somehow, right?
Yes.
And I know that people might be screaming at the screen or their phone saying, well, in the quantum world, we have probabilities and we don't know where the particle's going to end up. So in the science world, we call that randomness. And just the fact that we know that it's going to be in one of 5, 6 locations, calling that random, we're already stretching it, right? Because it's 25% here, 25% here, 25% here, 25% here. 4 places it can be that it always is, always. And to say that if it goes to one of those places, it's random, I just don't think that's the right way to use the word random. And if we had all the information and we had the information of what's causing our interface or our reality to do these things like an electron tunneling through a wall, then we would know where it was going to be. And it's just, randomness just, it doesn't quite fit the bill for me.
Well, when we, use the word randomness, I had thought about this for years. We had this conversation many times. And when I'm thinking about randomness, I'm like, well, my brain is a structured mechanism. So I'm processing data via my sensory mechanisms, and it's assimilating these individual portions of data, and it's creating this, they use the word holographic. I wouldn't necessarily call it that exactly, but we'll go with it. It's like this holographic image because of electrochemical signaling in the brain and in the body. And because of this, you have this holistic image, but it's not, it's orderly. Yeah. So you can't, your brain doesn't allow for you to process randomness. Yeah. Even if it was random, your brain would turn it into order.
Exactly. That's what the brain is meant to do to survive, is to see patterns. So to say that we can even comprehend randomness is just the fact that there's a pattern there that we don't see. And could we even see randomness? Could our brain even perceive it? Because why would evolution allow for that? Why would evolution, as we're surviving, allow for our brain, like you said, which is a data structure, to be able to perceive this thing that we call random? These are thoughts that you really need to chew on. Yeah. And why we're bringing up randomness and with cause and effect is, right, those are going to be opposites. Cause and effect, and would you say that?
Well, or? I would say that problem is the verbiage that we have to use, because randomness is not the opposite of order. Order's opposite is a different degree of order.
Disorder, right?
Yes,
sure.
Yes. So it's like, and disorder would technically be order,
right?
But randomness,
good call.
It's just like an elephant pops into the room. It has nothing to do with physics. No one was around it. There wasn't like an increase of frequency, and they opened a doorway, and and
Right.
it was teleported here.
Because that
or-
would be cause and effect.
Yes, it would be cause and effect. Randomness is like, okay, you're going to turn into a turkey right now,
Right,
And
for no
I'm
reason.
for no reason,
Yeah.
whatsoever. And when we think about it, to not get off track, but when we think about randomness and we think about like building on randomness, it's like we talked about it turning into order.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like because someone could argue what is external to you is random.
Mm-hmm.
They could argue that, but then I would be like, well, how do we objectively apply laws to physics to build things? Wouldn't spaceships randomly just blow up whether they worked right or not? Or wouldn't planets just dissolve and wouldn't we like notice that?
Yeah.
Even if it is order, we'd be like, oh well, universes, planets come in and out of, but that's not what happens.
Right.
We see the causal and effectual relationship between all these things. So we're like, oh, okay, well.
Yeah. No matter how strange it is, no matter how strange what's happening in our universe is, we can always come back to cause and effect. So that's why it's hard. Think of the strangest thing you've ever seen. The strangest thing you can think of. And now think if that is random. Like Jordan was just saying, me randomly turning into a turkey or something. Gaga, gaga. I just did it. It was random. No. But that is, sure, you might be able to start postulating of how randomness could exist because of something like that. So maybe something that you've seen that you thought is random. But then really think about, was there something that caused that thing to happen? Or is it random? If it is, let us know in the comments below. If there's something that has happened to you that you perceive as random and you think you can prove that it's random, we would love to hear in the comments down below.
Well, someone might say, well, random as in I randomly bumped into a stranger and I was genetically related to him, but I was in an entirely different country.
Sure, but
And that's not randomness either.
no, it's not. But sure, if you were to ask that, we would let them know that wasn't randomness, right? It's not. You guys were on your way to meet each other. You couldn't see it that you were on your way to meet each other, but you were on your way to meet each other.
Yes, and we weren't even discussing that type of randomness. That's why I brought it up, because someone else could say, well, that was a random encounter. And it's like, that's not random either.
Yep.
Nothing is random, because at the end of the day, when you assume that something is random, most of the time it's because you don't understand it.
Yep.
The scope by which you observe it might be too small.
Yep.
So it's like, oh, well, I thought that was random. Like, you thought the tectonic plates in the earth were shifting was random, but no, this happens over a 780,000 year. I'm guessing, but it's like a 780,000 year. Every so often it changes, and it does, or all the plates shift entirely at a certain point, and then that happens every so often. Like we talk about rhythms and stuff like that. It's like not random when you zoom out, and we're trying to zoom out with infinity with cause and effect, and be like, well, let's step outside the universe. What was started the universe? And then it's like, well, is there infinite causes inside the multiverse? And then is the multiverse causally interacting with the universe and all the other universes, and the effect is reverberating back? Or is there something that interpenetrates that as well, and then ad infinitum?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you want to change your scope. Is it, if you're looking at something and you see randomness, if I look at it from a larger period of time, does it still see random? If I look at it from a smaller period of time, does it still seem random? And that's kind of the thing that we've been talking about too, is everything's relative. So I think randomness is like magic, and all it is ignorance to the science behind it. So if you start to think of randomness as something that you just don't understand yet, or you just haven't framed it the right way, then you're on your way to removing this, in my mind, an erroneous fact of randomness in our universe. And that's kind of what the cause and effect principle is. It shows us that can exist, and it also helps us understand the universe around us, because there isn't randomness. And that's why we're spending so much time on this idea of randomness, because it's not its opposite, but it's where a lot of people go to when they think cause and effect isn't a principle that supersedes all.
Yes.
That's always not the cop-out or the excuse, but the reason why cause and effect isn't everywhere or isn't a fundamental truth.
Yes.
Because randomness exists.
Exactly. And they'll say stuff like, well, you talked about this earlier about particles randomly coming in and out of existence, or something happening randomly in the quantum level. Mm-hmm. And we might call it random because we don't have enough data to, it's like, what if the time frame, like we talked about, what if the time frame is every 20 billion years a particle does this?
Right.
But it's like, do you got 20 billion years to observe it? And then, so you might, well, that's random, it just randomly popped. I don't know where it came from. It's like, it's a 20 billion year cycle.
Yeah.
And we haven't been around 20 billion years.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, and then think about, we talked about this before. If it's random, imagine the particles of randomness creating cause and effect as a random property.
Yeah. Yeah, because we talked about the bubbling up effect. And the bubbling up effect would be if you have quantum particles that, let's say, they do act in somewhat of a random manner. I'll allow it for this thought experiment. And that randomness quickly dissipates. It's not like, oh, because there's randomness on a quantum scale, there's randomness on a macro. That was where I made a mistake, thinking that because it exists on a quantum scale, it exists on a macro scale. But think about the process. If there is randomness with these quantum particles, by the time it gets to a scale to where it matters to me and you, it's gone. It's not random anymore. It's now locked into cause and effect. Cause and effect has came in and grabbed it because we didn't know what was happening with this quantum particle, and then it was here randomly. But now it's randomly here in a system, and now it has to obey those systems' rules, the laws of physics. So now it's trapped inside of cause and effect. So even if we allow it on this small scale, it doesn't mean that it changes anything. And people could say, well, what about in your brain? There's, non-linearity, and there are, your neurons are comprised of these same particles. What if something happens in your brain on this quantum scale?
That's a good point. Think about people when they say that they have quantum fluctuations that may or may not collapse randomly in your brain. And then think about how this, the idea of sending a thought back through the quantum to the field. Okay? And then if it was random, then none of your ideas would ever manifest.
Right.
Because it would just randomly disassociate them.
Yeah.
So now the if the cause doesn't equal the effect. I might want a banana and just get an orange now.
Yeah.
Because it's random, or instead of giving me a banana, or it gives me a car.
Right.
Or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I liked it, and I still struggle with this. And that I like the idea of a little bit of randomness inside parameters of cause and effect, where it's not going to be something so far off, but it allows for a variety. And every now and again in my head, I'll think, oh yeah, well that's how it works, and then we'll talk about it, and it's like, nope, it just can't. It just can't because of X, Y, or Z. So if you're like me and it's like, well, what if we just give it this little, this probability thing? And it's like, fine, we can give it the probability. And that's as close as we're going to get. We'll give it this probability thing where it has 25% here, 25% here, 25% here, 25% here. And you get this one time and you get this the other time. And it's like, okay, that seems like I'm getting a variety. Where I don't always know exactly what's going to happen. So our ego or whatever it is inside of us is more complacent with something like that. And maybe that's why the interface exists like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the interface processes it through cause and effect. And I think that I think that nature functions that way. I would like to think that, you know, because like I said, I feel like we wouldn't be able to build anything. Like we'd build a house and it would randomly disappear.
Right. Or if you're on your spiritual journey and you are starting to work with these principles and you are sending information back and forth with whatever, you don't want that to be random. You really, right? You don't want all that work to go for nothing. Yeah. So the principles work more for you than against you. It's easy to look at the principles as constraints and holding you back, and how freeing it would be to be separated from the principles. But really, you should look at it. It is a safety mechanism, and it's also a way to ensure karma. It's a way to ensure these things that justice. It's a way to ensure these things that we want in a society, that we want in our own life. And these principles help to make those a reality.
Yeah, that's a very great point, because when we hear the words reap what we sow and karma, we don't think of cause and effect, but that's what that is. Karma is cause and effect. Reap what you sow is you're reaping something you sowed. The sowed is the cause. The reaping is the effect. So even in a religious sense or a spiritual sense, that principle is present. The only problem is the scope. Once again, we think that there's a beginning to reaping what you sow. We think there's a beginning to creation. And the reality is that cause and effect doesn't allow for that either. No. Like, cause and effect just comes in and kicks everything out the house. It's like, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone. Randomness, get out of here. It's very much, it clears house. Yeah, it's not playing around. Cause and effect is not playing around. It's not.
And the Greek philosophers, the causeless causer or the motionless mover.
Exactly.
Is that
causeless cause, motionless.
Plato?
Yes.
Plato. So they've been talking about this, philosophizing on this for centuries, and this is the same principle. So the causeless causer, and I kind of want you to go into a little bit about why you can't have a first cause.
Yes. So this is a brilliant idea, and before I even really was like more well researched and studied with Plato and Socrates and all these other like Greek-esque philosophers, Pythagoras, Italian, I was calling it the thoughtless thinker.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the reason why is because when you get to the highest level of contemplating it and thinking about it as a mind and thinking about it always existing, you can't add to, you can't take away from, you can't change it, because it is. It's like when we talked about it being omnipotent and omniscient and omnipresent. It's all of these things, so you can't add value to it. You can't take value from it,
right?
And you can't change anything in it, because every possible change has always existed. So it's motionless in that sense, yet it is the mover of all things, because everything exists inside of it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just like the concept of the library, where the librarian is infinite, and then the library is infinite, and the books are infinite, and the shelf's infinite, and then the pages infinite, and the paragraph, the chapters, the paragraphs, the sentences, the words, the letters, the ink. Everything's infinite, and it always existed inside of this infinite library, and it never has to be read. Not one book, and no one ever wrote the books. So, but from the perspective of us viewing it, and this is just from cause and effect, because that's the only way that we can view it. We can't view it from a random perspective,
right,
or any other perspective but cause and effect. And when we look up from, as characters from the book to the reader, we're like, well, the reader's always reading. The librarian is always reading, and it's reading all the books. Sometimes we assume it's just reading our book, and we feel like it could just stop reading. It can't. It's always been reading. It's always been writing. It's never been reading. It's never been writing. You know what I mean? Like, it's all of these things. So it's the first cause for us. Now, what that thing is, we can't say.
Yeah.
Because we can only say what is inside the book. What inside the book, to all of our fans, are these principles. The principles are the laws of the book that we're in. All these other infinite books, like you talked about earlier, yeah, it'd be nice to just shed the principles and go jump into some of these other books, but our book is infinite. And that's what people forget. Like, our book of cause and effect is infinite. So we can never transcend our book and go look at another book. The very fact that I'm speculating on it right now,
Right.
I'm imagining it from the interface that we've inherited by way of our principles in this particular universe. That's the scope by which I analyze it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so yeah, I think if you wanted to think about that, if I'm understanding what you're saying, you could think about energy because it's conserved, because it can constantly change forms, yet its energy is kind of like the causeless causer or the motionless
Yes,
mover.
except for that would be one side of the causeless cause or the motionless mover, because one side of it, everything is being read, everything is happening. You see what I'm saying? Everything is happening. And it's like those characters you draw on a page, and you draw the character doing something slightly different on each page. And then when you flip through the pages, it looks like he's actually doing it, but each page is an individual slide.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? But then imagine that whole book is infinite and it's always been going on.
Yeah.
And then imagine that it can't go on because going on implies that something's happening. So from the other side, nothing is actually happening.
Yeah, so the superposition
Yes.
of our universe, of our
Infinite existence.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the scope of just the energy is just a little too small. It's a little bit too small of a scope, so I needed to step back and say, okay, well, if that's not fitting into this principle, how can I fit it into this principle? Okay, what I need to do is go out a little bit further. And when I did that, I went out to the superposition, which is what we've talked about on this podcast a few times. It's something that scientists have proven through quantum field theory and quantum mechanics, that the superposition is what the state that matter exists in before it collapses or before it's observed, and not observed, but measured. We say observed, but measured. So that is really the key behind a lot of the principles, is being able to, once you find an idea of truth, like the superposition, which we found all the way back at circle and the dot, then it's going to be a truth for this principle. So even if it's a problem of perspective, you don't have to just jump larger and smaller. Jump to your dictionary of truths and say, okay, well, back here I found a truth with this principle, and now how can I apply that to this principle? And you'll be right.
Yes.
Because those principles are going to all exist within those truths.
Exactly. So, and that's why the conversation becomes even more profound over time with the podcast and the series, because we talked about this earlier. Most people will only discuss a principle, and one principle at a time. Maybe more, but most of the time, one principle at a time. And we tried to do that, and we were trying to steer away from combining all of them because that's so natural to us. So we had to do the opposite, and we had to break it down, and we tried to prevent from discussing the other principles alongside, because all of them go together. So like he said, if you find one truth in one principle, you can apply that truth to all the principles, and eventually put all the principles and put all the truths in your dictionary of truth together, and then you can come to a more sound conclusion, because essentially that's what we're teaching you how to do. We're teaching you how to see the principle, and we're beating you in the head with it for a reason, because it's like, well, get this down so that when you look at something, you see everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when you look at one thing, you see all the principles, and we're going to do that with our logo. So that'll help, I think, kind of solidify how to do it, and that'll be after gender. So that's what we have coming up next, is the last principle, gender. And then after that, we're going to break down the logo and talk about how all the principles exist within it. We could do it with anything, but we just think it'd be kind of cool to kind of show the symbolism and how the principles apply to our logo.
Yes.
So, in closing thoughts, what cause and effect is something that can't be escaped. It's something that has always existed. It will always exist. And that's a good thing, because we talked about randomness quite a bit, and how that people think that is the way to escape cause and effect, but really, we even got to the point of does it exist, right? So cause and effect is something that the more you build on it and the more you understand it, the more it doesn't take away any kind of mystical or grandeur. Because I think randomness, people think that there's like grandeur in randomness, but that's not the case because we don't know what's going to happen next with randomness. It's so hard to even think about randomness. Usually what people think about when they're thinking about randomness is a controlled probability of events that happen in their favor. So that's not that's a fairy tale way of I think looking at randomness, and cause and effects kind of protects us from that.
Yes, and another thing, you know, for closing thoughts, we talked about randomness in relationship to the Bell's curve.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, if it's random, how does it always come out the same way?
Yeah, good point. Yeah, how if the items being measured within the probability curve are randomly happening, then how does it always end up as a distribution? That shows you that the way we use the word random, and we use the word random, but when we use it, we know the frame in which we're using it. It's more of a, hey, I didn't have the data to know that was going to happen, but it happened. And that's just not the framework in which scientists use it. And that's the framework that I would hope that we as a community and we as a people can start to understand randomness. Because, yeah, you wouldn't have statistics, would not be a thing if randomness existed, because there would be no scope in which that randomness would have to act.
Yes, the data would always be different.
Yep.
It'd be like sometimes you throw something in the sky and it comes down. Sometimes the universe disappears.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else for closing thoughts?
Cause yourself to move your finger towards the like, share, comment, etc. button, because we're gonna need that.
Yeah.
Okay. Like you said earlier, it's truly to your and our benefit on this journey. Okay.
Yeah. Make sure you're tuning in next week for gender, and be safe. Have a good night. Peace.
Don't talk to me, it's off to me, assault police. The archer screeds, my carpentry is carpeting for all of these. False MCs, a chocolate scene, I'm Charlie Sheen. I darken dreams, the carpet bleeds, my corporate leads. A scar with your whole face like a Carter scene. I go hard cause the car to me. You ain't hard as he, or the yard hate. Bar hate, it's the Nazarene. Choking line with a main, I'm a martyr king. Yeah, I'm a god, so it's all with me. Pull at your heart, I'm chewing at your arteries. Damn, for the artistry, the artist bleeds. I'm martyring your darling. It's all with me, get lost at sea. Shout the priest, stomp the beast. I do not play, it's often seen. I'm off the boat, got a blade on me, homie, I'm off the go. I don't know, but you niggas put them off the dose, or off the smoke, a cough, a choke, a puke up a coffin, so with a whole body in it like a mafia.